So this is the RFC. And this is the issue. But basically, like, Eric, are you there? Can you get through?
I am here, but can you hear me? No? Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you a little bit.
Oh.
There you go.
Still?
It's a little better.
Can you? Okay, so the microphone is my phone. Okay. So you want me to present the IP, right?
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
The ERC, RFC.
Yeah. Yes,
okay.
Please.
A re-enabling of the sending and receiving commands, and so previously it was called proof of ownership, but since during the discussion RFC, we decided that this was not necessary to make of account ownership. It's been removed, so receiving of SMP. So the whole RFC is about the want for users to send and request funds.
You're breaking up quite bad from me, Eric. I'm not sure how it is for you.
To avoid the trouble we until later after V1. So we came up with this request flow, request and send flow. So there is a send and a request command as before, but the difference now is that it includes potentially a back and forth to get the other user's address. So I made additional propositions regarding the format of these commands, and in the describe it. So if he does the request command, it's pretty simple. He selects his wallet, asset and amount, and it sends the request to Alice, and she just taps on it. It opens.
Eric, can you hear me? Because you're breaking up a lot. We really can't hear you.
The sign notifications done because of the network, or like recently or all along?
All along.
Oh,
that's about 50% of what you say.
Kind of comes and goes.
Okay.
So I could take
sure.
Yeah, I mean,
okay.
I could take a shot at explaining this, but I think like we should just clarify, like, what's the outcome that we want to get from this call? Do we want to get, you know, people's opinions on whether this is going to work properly, or just make sure that everybody's aware of what the plan is? So, all right, I'll talk through the feature really briefly.
I switched to Wi-Fi. Is it better, or it's still clunky?
It's actually better.
Okay. So maybe I give it another try, but interrupt me sooner if it's bad, and we just give up. So I try to go to the specific part that is not completely written. So Ricardo suggested to use the EIP 681, which is a form of URI for payments, which is already mostly implemented in Status React. So the way it goes is that it's similar to what we had for QR codes for making requests, right? And so the idea would be that instead of the current weird commands format we have in messages, we send regular messages and it's just that instead of containing text, they contain this kind of URI, so that you can send them from. It's not a different message than the other message. It's just a regular text. It's a URI, and instead of being a link that you click, it shows, if it's recognized by status as a send or request command, it shows as such. And the flow would be that still good, the connection?
Yes,
Or,
yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. So the way the flow would go is that Bob would send a request command. So he taps on a request command. So right now it's /send /request, and then he selects. So now we need to ask for his wallet as well. He also asks for says which asset, which amounts, and then it sends this EIP 681 URI for payment requests in a text message. From Alice's point of view, status shows that a simple URI message as a request message, and she taps on it. So it's something like pay, or Matches doing the designs. So she taps on it, and it opens. It invites her to sign the transaction, and then once she signed, she sends the transaction hash to Bob. So my proposal for Ricardo proposed that we also use a EIP. So EIP 681 is a subset of EIP 831, which is these Ethereum URIs. And for payment requests, you put the pay prefix, and here we would put the TX prefix and then dash hash of the transaction, and that would be like a URI for an Ethereum transaction. Or, I mean, that's something we can discuss further. Actually, we could also add a few details, like the chain. But basically, the idea would be that instead of having these complex messages with a specific format, we use an EIP, an Ethereum standard for these commands. Then the tricky part is when Bob uses the send command, because he doesn't know Alice wallet. So the idea would be that Bob sends transaction a send request. So still using EIP 831, we would use the request dash prefix and model it the same way as the pay URI. So that Alice, when Alice receives that, it's an invitation to. The action would be to choose a wallet. So she taps on the message, she chooses a wallet, and then it sends an actual request to Bob, and then Bob presses the request and is invited to sign. So that would be the flow.
Yeah, so I guess, Eric, are you hoping to receive feedback on EIP 681 specifically, whether we should use it or not? What would you like feedback on?
So I would like feedback on the idea of using EIP 681 and EIP 831.
Okay.
So if people have suggestion of what could be missing. So basically the idea of using these EIPs instead of using specific messages. So that would be regular messages that you can send even from Discord or from a bridge or whatever. There is no, it's just a string of characters basically. So yeah, there is that. And then the other is, more general feedback about the flow itself, and someone has like a strong opinion on whether it's good or bad. So yeah, that's basically it.
Okay.
So my question here is, do you hear me, guys?
Yes.
Yes.
So if I want to send some transaction to say Bob a few times, I have to go through the whole flow each time. Like I sending request each time and get address, and then only send something to the person. Or
so do you mean if you want to send to Bob, right? To someone?
Yep.
Well, you for this first version, I would say yes in most cases. Like you can, for instance, if you are doing it multiple time in a short amount of time, you request and simply change the value. So you tap pay and you just change the amount or the assets. That could be a trick. Or if the users has ENS name, this flow doesn't apply entirely, because if he has a ENS name, he has a public address, so you can send to this address directly without requesting anything. So that's the two options. And of course, after V1, the intention is to figure out a proper way to store user addresses. So, but we don't want to include it in the scope of this RFC, because it's much more work in terms of contact management and the synchronization of the contact data between devices.
Okay, so we are going to advertise some default address or something in future, but we're not doing this now, right?
We're not going to advertise a default address. We're just going to, well, yes, we might do that, for instance, in the contact request, or we might simply, after the first time you request, we might store the known addresses of a contact. For instance, every time you make a request for sending, and you answer with the different address, you might store these addresses, but there is a bunch of UX problems that we have to solve first. So for instance, when do you invalidate an address because maybe the other person doesn't want to use it anymore, and like all that kind of questions, we want to avoid them for now. So now the idea is that either he has a ENS name, so because the thing is, with the ENS name, you have a public address, you cannot avoid it. You own the name with the particular address, so that's an address that you need to, you cannot register an ENS name with an address you don't own right now. So
okay,
so
got it. Thank you.
Thanks for the question.
I got a question, Eric, to see if I understand it correctly. The send request flow, does that include specifying the amount as well?
Yes, but so all the parameters are optional in the EIP 681, but you can indeed decide to already tell the user, listen, I want to send you 100 SNT. So the message would, like it would show on Bob's device as, hey Bob, Alice is trying to send you 20 SNT, choose an address, then you choose your address. But it can also be incomplete, like Alice wants to send you funds. What is your address? So we could, so for that, I guess I leave it to you or Maciej to decide what you think is best. But technically, there is no issue with only giving partial information in the send request when you are asking for the wallet address.
It's currently designed that way. In the send flow, the user who is sending would input the amount of SNT or whatever token they want to send, and then the recipient is notified of the specific value that the user wants to send to them. So it's designed that way currently.
So actually, just a precision, the thing is that if you don't provide the amount and the asset that you want to send, then when the user sends you a request back, this is not pre-filled. So instead of having a transaction flow where you just have to press the pay button and then it opens the transaction signing flow, you still have to fill in the amount and the assets. So that's not a big deal. It's already feasible in this drawer, as far as I know. So it's not a big deal. But I'm just saying that anyway, when you're asking someone for their wallet, I think it's like a courtesy to say what for, and not just say, hey, give me my wallet.
Yeah, but so then the sender will have to actually manually refill the transaction.
Yeah, you have to manually fill it anyway the first time when you ask for the wallet address. I mean, I don't know what you mean by fill.
The second time, I mean, once the wallet address is shared, they can't just like open the same, a transaction and sign it. They have to fill in the amounts manually.
Yeah,
once approved.
Which they would have done that before for the request of wallet, right?
Okay,
so,
but do they have to do it again? Do they have to do it twice?
No. If they give it for the first iteration, they don't need to do it for the actual signing. But the thing is that it's a bit weird because, as Roman rightfully noticed, since we don't save the address right now because we don't want to deal with that, it's a bit weird to ask without saying what you're going to send, because it's only for once.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agreed.
But actually,
it sounds like it's the first the send request. In send request, the amount is optional, but as soon as you then if the request is honored and you send a transaction, you'll need to fill out the amount eventually. I think, I mean, given that it's already a bit more of a heavy flow than sending immediately, I think it does make sense to allow for the optional send request without amount, even though that's kind of like, I agree, it's like it's a bit weird to ask someone, hey, send me your address without knowing what it's for, but that's a social problem. I'm not sure we need to limit.
One thing is that in the flow I proposed, I didn't think of that. So potentially my intention was to use the regular send command, except now you choose also the wallet you are using to send. And for that reason, this command doesn't allow you to send until you've provided a valid amount and a valid asset. But it can be changed, of course. But the thing is that my idea was that though the flow is a tiny bit more complex from the implementation point of view, it's for the user, it's just taking him through the steps, because you want to send, so you start sending, you fill your amount, your asset, and you're just told, okay, you don't have, we don't know Bob address because he doesn't have a ENS name, for instance. So we're gonna ask him first to send you an address, and then you can make the actual sending. So the idea is that from the user perspective, we remove in that flow the request for wallet because it's implicit in the sending. So you just have the choice between sending or requesting, and sending implies that you're going to ask the wallet if you cannot find it yourself.
Yeah, from what it sounds like, if we're sort of reusing the same send flow for the send request flow, and that's the quickest solution, which is what we were looking for. I would stick to that. I do see a use case for sending a request without entering amounts in the case of SMT reactions later on, where you send the request just because you want to enable that feature, not because you already have something that you want to send. But I mean, we can think about that later because it's in the scope of other features. So we might.
Especially since right now you're not enabling the send feature because you're not saving the address. So, well, it would be that you basically you can put some random amounts, and then you go back to that message and you reuse the message to that Bob's replies, which will be a request, and you change the amount every time. That would be the hack between v1.1. If you want to somehow persist Bob's address, it will be in the request message that he sends back to you. But it's not a big deal to put some dummy amounts here if you really want that.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that makes sense. It's almost like a different feature to send. Like one is send a request for like a specific thing that you want to send, and the other is send a request for just the address. And we can work on that later, because initially it'll just be send a request to send a specific amount to ambassadors.
Yeah, for the use case about the marketing stuff, it's this flow is quite efficient. So it's either the users will send requests to marketing, or marketing will, because it's almost as good as if you could send directly, because from the user perspective, they will see, hey, your like marketing wants to send you 100 SMT, send your wallet. Okay, yeah. Sounds like spam, but it's yeah, that's the idea. If it looks legit enough in chat, it's good.
Oh, sounds good. Thanks, Eric.
Yeah, I see this is a legitimate use case, and for me it looks like it's a promise. Like you are promising to send someone funds if they give you your address. It's like you give your home address and you send me a mail with $100. I don't know if that's going to happen. The same thing is here. Yeah, I see the use case.
Yeah, and this is really like putting a first stone on this feature, and then there is tons of improvement we can think of. So, for instance, you can imagine that for when you receive this request for giving your wallet, if you don't trust the person, you could, for instance, be able to create a wallet on the spot and give that wallet, and only if you receive funds, you transfer them to your regular wallet, and that way you don't give your wallet away to random people until you're sure they are actually sending funds.
Yeah, that's a good point, because you can choose any wallet, so you don't have to give your main wallet to whatever is asking it. You can just generate a new one, derive a new one, and give that one.
So yeah, regarding feedback now, I'm mostly interested about everyone's opinion on the idea of using these EIPs and making our own prefixes for the transactions. And so transactions could actually be an EIP eventually, though then there is the request itself. I don't, as I explained in the RFC, I don't think it's that much of a use case except for this scenario, but who knows?
No, it's a real use case. It's important because now we don't know the people addresses. And about the transaction hash, I think that this is a way. For example, we have another issue of uncurling URLs. For example, if you paste a GitHub URL, it will show a preview. The same thing we can do here, but then we can select if it's Etherscan that we will uncurl it, or if it's other block explorer.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that, like, if we want it to be a general use case, what I mean by a use case is outside of status. It's like, what would you do if you scan a QR code with this request, which translates to this request URI? What would it mean for you? It would be like a payment request, except that it's like an intention to pay you. So
I see. So perhaps in this payment request, you need to put your contact ID for the person sending the address where they want to receive the funds, and also an identifier. What is the payment they are talking about? Because
the user will say.
Sorry, I think you're
breaking off.
Yeah, you break in the network socket. But I told that you need to put the contact ID of the payment request. So when you scan this QR code, for example, it's in a mall. So if you scan this QR code, you're going to get some money, and then it's this payment request. So it will send the message. So you need to probably include payment, the contact of the payment requester, and also the a payment identifier for this QR code.
I think we may have lost Eric, actually. Eric, are you? Yeah, we definitely lost Eric. Sorry, Ricardo, can you repeat what you said just one more time about using the payment code? What did you say?
So I said that the payment request, so whoever is creating this payment request probably needs to give the contact ID inside of the payment request to be contacted back.
Got it. Yep.
If it's inside a status, a message, of course, is the message sender. But if it's a QR code printed in a banner or something else, then you and also payment identifier, so you know what is this user talking about, or for example, it's a proof that the user actually seen the QR code.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I have that in the notes. Oh, Eric's back. Hey, Eric. Eric, you're muted. I don't know where you dropped off. Can you hear us?
Yeah, but Ricardo said exactly what I wanted to say. So can you hear me?
Yep.
Can you? Yeah. So it's good for me.
Okay.
I think we can continue the discussion. I'm not asking for the feedbacks right now. I think people can just join the discussion, like read the EIP, the RFC, and the proposition, and talk there, because I think it's too hard to give feedback on the fly like this. It's an important matter. So we were talking mostly about replacing command messages, which are a specific type of message with a specific content in transit, by something much more simple, just a URI based off some Ethereum standards. So that's the main proposal here that I'm making on top of the RFC. So I invite people who wants to talk about it to comment on the issue in the status core repo.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. And thanks everybody who weighed in. That was our only topic for today. So if nobody else has anything they'd like to bring up, we can go ahead and call this meeting. Is there anything that anyone would like to talk about? It's not on the agenda currently. Okay, cool. Then thank you guys all for being here, and have a great day.
Thanks, Rachel. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, Rachel. Bye.